Hey, my friend, it is so very wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jedley, and this is Reading with Your Kids Rewind, moments worth resharing from the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Today we're taking a look back at some special episodes that happened this year, 2021. Back in the spring of 2021, we had an incredibly talented intern working with us named Alexia Brown. Alexia is a student at Emerson College here in Boston, and she suggested that we create a podcast that will give parents the information they need to inspire their kids to work together with them to protect the planet. And hence, our series of special episodes called Protecting the Planet was born. We begin today's rewind with a listen back to an episode that first aired May 6, 2021. It's called Captain Polo Saves the World, and Alexia and I's guest is Alan Hesse. I'm blown away. Where did the inspiration for Captain Polo come from?
Yeah, polar bears are pretty much well known all over the world, even if you've never seen one. Which is, I've never actually seen a polar bear except in the zoo, right? Okay. But I'd love to see one in the wild. But anyway, it's a symbol of what's happening to the planet in terms of polar ice melt. Polar bears are apex predators. They are well known for being the largest of their kind. And who doesn't have a cuddly polar bear on their shelf somewhere? Let me present to you Captain Polo in person right here.
Oh my goodness, you have your very own polar bear with you.
I do. And so polar bears are well-known animals. They often used as symbols. So I thought, it would be a pretty good inspiration would be to use a polar bear for this story.
Yeah, I feel like to write a whole series about climate change, you must really be passionate kind of about that topic. Do you have a background in climate change, or did like an experience happen to you that really got you passionate about the movement?
A good question, Alexia. I am a conservation biologist professionally, so that kind of explains why I'm doing this in the first place. I've been about conservation since I was a kid, and I've been working in conservation as a scientist for the past 30 years in Latin America, not in the Arctic. But climate change came about because a couple of years ago, when I was still in my full-time conservation job, I was working with farmers in the Andes. And farmers all over the world are the first people who are affected by weather patterns not being as they should be, because they depend on water. And water can come to the farmers in the Andes in two ways. Either it doesn't come at all, which is a drought, which is a big, big problem, or it can come too much of it all at the same time, which is flooding, causing landslides. And in the mountainous regions, this is very serious for infrastructure and in fact threatens humans' life. And so we were getting to the point where we had to talk to these farmers we were working with to improve their productive practices, to protect forests in climate change terms, because projects at that time were already starting to be presented to donors in terms that address climate change. Because climate change was emerging as this priority issue affecting the planet. And so if you wanted to do anything to do with forests or anything to do with the natural world, if you didn't talk about climate change to the donors, to your project colleagues, and to the stakeholders of the projects, you were kind of missing the point. And then I realized I knew nothing about climate change. And nobody on my team knew anything about climate change. So I took a course, learned the basics, but I thought I need to share this knowledge in a way that everyone can access, not just scientists. I need to make it in a fun way. I need to make kids get into it. And so I got the idea of doing my next comic book about it, graphic novel. And that's how Captain Polo came about. And so the inspiration came from wanting to share the information to as many people as possible in an entertaining form as well.
Did you get any blowback from your colleagues by choosing to go this, what some people might think is a less than serious route of delivering education? I'm all with you, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that the people who need to hear this information the most are kids, and this is a great way to get that information to kids. But did any of the professionals that you were working with say, "Oh, Alan, what do you need to write an academic paper? We got to get it peer reviewed. What are you doing writing a comic book?"
It's funny you should say that, because actually I got quite the opposite. People were really into it. And it's funny because when I walk into a scientific conference or something, just another one of them, they're like, "Oh yeah, whatever, you're just another one of us guys." But then if they say, "So what do you do?" and then I include the fact that I do graphic novels and comics, not only for climate change but for anything at all that's kind of environmental education, their eyes light up. And we're talking about high-level scientists here. They get it. They're like, "Oh wow, that's so cool," So actually, I get a bit more success with that than all the rest of it, which is quite interesting.
It sets you apart.
Yeah.
I feel like the idea to make learning about climate change, learning about anything scientific, is just really important to make accessible for all different types of kids. And so it's great that you have both a book, but it also is a graphic novel. So it includes a lot more than just like words for kids that might not want to read like a very long, wordy kind of book.
Yeah. It's a challenge though. It's a challenge getting all that data and information packaged into speech bubbles.
I'm sure.
Right?
Really want to encourage you to listen to our entire conversation with Alan. You can find it by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click the Listen to the Podcast button on the page. That'll take you to our podcasting page. You can use the search bar there to search out Captain Polo Saves the World. It was first published May 6, 2021. Our next guest on our Rewind is Evelyn Bookless. Evelyn returned to the show to celebrate her new book. This interview was published on May 13th, 2021, and it was titled Protecting Our Planet and Our Trees. I love that idea of encouraging kids to plant trees and helping them understand that it's going to take a long time for this tree to grow. And we had a beautiful oak tree in our backyard that was so wonderful. There was a tree swing on it, and we would tie the hammock to the oak tree, and this tree provided so much joy for us, and it was planted probably 100 or more years ago. And I imagine helping kids imagine that, hey, we're not going to be able to enjoy this tree like that, but there's going to be a family 75 years from now, 50 years from now, that are going to be sitting underneath the tree that you planted, reading a book together. I think that's something really cool that our kids can kind of wrap their heads around.
Absolutely. That's a lovely idea. And, there's something to me so special about trees and so magical. And I grew up on a farm in the west of Ireland where we had lots of trees around the back, and we played in them all the time and got dirty and didn't come in until it was dinner time. And it was the good old days, where no one really cared what you were doing as long as you were coming when it was time to eat. But also I was in a very unusual position in that my dad planted a whole forest, actually. And that's another thing that drew me to this, wanting to write a story about trees. 20 or 30, it must have been 30 years ago, he got this idea that he was going to plant a forest because we have the land and he wasn't using this land for anything. And there was a government project behind it where they, put some money towards it as well. And I encouraged a lot of people to do this. But we now have this mature forest that I go and visit with my family when I'm in Ireland. That's beautiful. And it's grown up in my lifetime because it's the type of trees that grow that bit faster. There's pine trees and all sorts of things in there. There was a lot of connection to trees for me. And I think a lot of people feel that way. There's just something so special and magical about them. And, you know, and I've learned more about them, that even underneath the trees, there's a whole world going on, that trees talk to each other through their roots and they communicate, which really is incredible. There's some picture book about that now, I believe. I'm not sure. I have to find out. I could be making that up. Okay.
Yeah, I think also just building that sense of community within like planting trees and things like that can be so cool for kids. Just connecting with people, overprotecting the planet, feeling like it's a group effort, that can be really empowering. I know I live in Boston, and obviously it's really hard for me to go outside and just plant a tree because it's really hard to find the land, first of all, and then it's really hard for trees to find the strength to grow in these kind of environments. But I know personally, because trees are a huge passion of mine, there are so many organizations and things like that just a Google away that are planting trees and making an effort to put more green spaces in the city and help those baby trees survive those couple of first years where they're really vulnerable. And it's been an excellent source of community for me as well.
Lovely. That's great. Really nice to hear. And like you say, the community coming together aspect of anything is wonderful and badly needed when life returns to normal again and we can all be around each other.
Oh my gosh, yes. Once coronavirus gets under control, we can all have a tree planting party.
That sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to help kids see themselves like Captain Green or like Johnny Appleseed, just going out and planting all these trees and really changing the world.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And they do, you know, and that's one of the reasons I put the superhero in the story, because it's a way to have children even more excited, you know. And
if you would like to hear our entire conversation with Evelyn, you can find it at readingwithyourkids.com. The name of the episode is Protecting Our Planet and Our Trees, and it was first published May 13th, 2021. You know, in addition to readingwithyourkids.com, you can find the Reading with Your Kids podcast on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Himalaya, Ghana, Stitcher Radio, Podchaser. You kind of get the picture. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'd be so very grateful if you could subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast. And if you love the show, we'd really love it if you could let people know by leaving a rating and a review. Right now, we're going to listen back to our interview with Meeg Pincus. It was first published on June 17th, and it was titled Ocean Soup. There are certain things we can do, and again, I'm certainly not perfect at this at all, but I know just a few years ago, I just thought it was really dumb. Well, I think it's really dumb you have to buy water, or that people buy water. And then you buy in those little plastic bottles, and that gets thrown away. And so I just decided I'm just going to recycle my Snapple bottles, wash it every time I use it, mix up whatever, and I don't have to pay for those bottles and throw them away or recycle them.
Yes. I'm peeking at the book right now, and in the back matter, I share that we use 3 million plastic water bottles every hour in the United States. So, yeah, we need to stop that. We need to carry our reusable water bottles. That's an easy thing we all can do. There's so many easy things. But one of the things, too, that was when I spoke with the scientists and I really dug into the science, there's with these children's books about science, we do all this research and then, it's 32 pages. But the scientists were really clear that we can do things as individuals, but the biggest thing is getting the manufacturers to change and asking for change from the top. That's how I say it in the book. We go to the top and we ask them to change, because that's where the real impact is going to be. When we say as consumers, I don't want reusable plastic bottles anymore. Put it in glass. Put it in paper.
Yeah. How did we go in my lifetime? my lifetime. Now, granted, I'm almost 100 years old, so it's a long lifetime. But in my lifetime, we went, when we were thirsty on a summer day, we drank from someone's garden hose. When we walked by, we turned it on, we drank. The water was gross for a while. But from water fountains, and now everybody needs their individual plastic water bottles, and you have to pay for water. It boggles my mind.
Yeah. I mean, so much of this damage that happened, it's all happened since the 1940s. Mm-hmm. That's when plastics, as we know them today, were invented. They were a byproduct of the oil industry, and they were made from leftovers. And they became this product that was advertised as convenient and, so easy and so wonderful, and you could do anything with it. And I think a lot of people really believe that, not knowing what the long-term cost would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm imagining, I hope that the people who invented it also had no idea what kind of a problem they were creating.
Right. I can't imagine that anyone in the 40s could have imagined what's happened to the oceans today. Mm-hmm. It's pretty hard to imagine even now.
Yeah. What was it that got you so invested in this issue?
Well, two things. One, I grew up and I live in Southern California. I live 4 miles from the Pacific Ocean. So I have spent, much of my life walking on the beach. I have a family of surfers. We have a very coastal life. So I see the plastics on our beaches. I see more and more as I get older each decade. So that was one reason. And another one was I was working for a nonprofit as a humane educator and working in elementary schools. And humane education is teaching about how to care for people, animals, and the planet in large and small ways. And one of the lessons that we did with the kids was about ocean microplastics. And the kids got so excited about doing something about it. And I went looking, and there wasn't a book for young kids. There was some middle grade, but there wasn't anything that I really felt explained this to those younger kids. And I thought, then I have to write it.
Yeah. So you were mentioning earlier that certainly there's some things that we can do as individuals and as a family to reduce our personal use of plastics. But you mentioned that what we really need to do is to get to the manufacturers, to the folks who are bottling the water. And we're talking about Coke and Pepsi and some other ginormous corporations. How can a little kid reach those folks?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways. There's letter writing, which is a great family activity. My kids grew up writing letters to companies. That was just part of our homeschooling that we would do. And we heard back from a lot of them, and we would let them know what we liked and what we hoped that they would change. So that's a great way, is writing letters. You could also plan kind of community events. You can not buy things, and that's part of letting companies know that you're not buying their products anymore until they change the packaging. When companies have a reason to change, when they're not making the sales, that's when they'll change.
One of the things I really love about our Protecting the Planet with Your Kids series of episodes is there's so many ideas, so many ways that we can work together with our kids to love and protect the planet. I'm so grateful that Alexia was on our team and made the suggestion. I'm so grateful for guests like Meeg Pincus. We really encourage you to check out the entire interview with Meeg. It's called, again, Ocean Soup, and it was published June 17th. One of the things I love about doing the Reading with Your Kids podcast is I get to meet so many interesting, fascinating people, and I get to become friends with a lot of them. Our next guest is one of those people. Christa Avampato was first on the show back in October 29th, 2017, one of our very first guests. She was on to celebrate her YA novel, Emerson Page and Where the Light Enters. She returned to the show July 29th, 2021. One of the things that I learned in becoming friends with Christa is that she is a passionate environmentalist. She returned to the show on July 19th, 2021. The episode was called Protecting the Planet with Indoor Farms. It is A fascinating conversation with lots of great ideas that we can do with our kids, little actions that can make a big difference. Here's Christa Avampato. So once we help our kids fall in love with the earth and help them understand that we are part of this thing we call nature, what are some of the choices that we can talk about with our kids that we can make every day that will make a difference tomorrow?
Yep, exactly. So one of the things that I really love is I love for kids to just have a plant that they take care of. I don't care where they get that plant from. I don't care if they grow it from a seed. I don't care if they get it from like a little urban nursery. I don't care if it's like a little plant in their park that they go over and like water, take care of. There's so many amazing things you can do with container gardens. So in New York City, like I don't have any outdoor space that's mine, right? I don't have a backyard that's just mine per se. But I do have a little fire escape. I do have some windowsills back here in my kitchen. And I have tiny little container plants. And you can use milk cartons. You can use an old mug that you don't use anymore, like all kinds of like recycled and upcycled containers. You put a little dirt in, give it a little water, give it a little sunlight. And I think that wonder of like growing something is really exciting, I think, and empowering for kids. And also recognizing that like, wow, the earth provides like everything. When they go into a grocery store, like somebody grew that watermelon out of the ground. Like it isn't just like in some bin or on a shelf, right? Or in a container. So that's, I think container gardens or growing anything or taking care of, some type of nature, whether it's in a city park or on their windowsill, I think is great. Also just eating a diet that's rich in plants and lower in animal products. So I eat a plant-based diet. I eat a tiny bit of meat. I eat a little bit of dairy, but most of what I eat is fruits and vegetables. What that does a number of things. So one, fruits and vegetables are much lighter on the earth than animal products in terms of the amount of resources, water, land, processing that they need in order to get to our grocery stores and get into our homes. It's also better for you, right? There's all kinds of scientific research that if you eat a diet that is mostly plants, mostly fruits and vegetables, you will be a healthier person. You have a better shot at a healthier life than if you eat lots of animal products. And so that's a choice we make every single time we sit down to eat anything. We make that choice. Also, reducing food waste is another big thing of like, in the U.S., we throw away about 40% of the food that we have, which is like tragic. One, when you think about hunger, right? So 1 in 6 Americans is hungry every night. They go to bed and they don't know where their next meal is coming from. Like 1 out of 6. That's a lot of people. And I actually grew up a pretty poor kid. We grew up below the poverty line. We grew a lot of the food that we ate because we didn't really have a choice. And we lived in a farming community. So we had lots of friends who were farmers who would drop stuff off at our doorstep that we would see. But reducing food waste. So if you eat everything that you grow or everything that you buy, just doing that of like trying to not throw out food, that's a huge win for the planet. Because you think about food waste and it's all the resources it took to produce that food just in the trash, right? Wasted all those resources. And it often ends up in the landfill, which like our landfills are already overrun. So, and if we do have food scraps, if we can find a way to compost them. So even though I don't have a garden, there are places in New York that I can go to drop off my like my vegetable scraps and stuff like that. They will take it. They take it to a city processing plant. They produce compost from it. And then that compost goes to our city parks and helps to like fertilize our parks, which is amazing. And then another thing that you can do is, we are a very car-centric country. I wish we weren't, but we are. Mm-hmm. We're getting better. If you can walk, bike, or take public transit, that's also a huge win. And that's a choice that you're making every time you try to go somewhere. If you can drive your car less, that's also a big win for the planet. Fewer carbon emissions into the atmosphere, and also more exercise for our bodies, mm-hmm. which we know is a good thing to do. So those are a couple of things that, kids and families can make those choices every single day. and be empowered by them.
And as you were talking about those choices, not wasting food, not throwing away almost half of our food, not needing to buy gas for our car, that means we have more money to do fun things.
Exactly. It's good for our health. It's good for our bank accounts. It's good for, and we have we can go spend money exactly like you said on experiences, on, taking care of other people. Like I try to donate a certain amount of money that I make to nonprofits that are doing great things in the community and in the world.
If you would like to hear the entire conversation we had with Christa, and we encourage you to do that, please search Protecting the Planet with Indoor Farms at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Time to wrap up another edition of Reading with Your Kids Rewind. Thank you so much for joining us. Please be sure to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, sign up for our free newsletter, and use that contact button if you'd like to make a suggestion or just ask a question or just say hi. We love saying hi. You can also connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at readingwithyourkids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. I want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady. I want to give a special thanks to Alexia Brown for her help with these episodes of the show. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of Reading with Your Kids Rewind.